I will call to order this September 15th, 2022 College Township Council Meeting. Will all who are able please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome this evening. I am Carla Stilson. I am the Vice Chair of College Township Council for this year. Rich Frank, our chair, was unable to make it this evening. As you can see, we are short council personed right now. We will have a third council member making us a quorum at some point, hopefully in the next half hour. Dustin Best will join us online. Just to be clear for anybody who needs to know, if any motion were to pass this evening about anything on our agenda, it would have to pass by all three of us in order for it to be an approval and move forward. And that's the state law. So welcome to those of you in attendance in person and those of you in attendance online. Just some ground rules for my online viewers and attendees. If you have something that you'd like to say during an opportunity to say that, you can use the raise hand feature and we will call on you when it is your turn to speak. If you are new to technology and you cannot find the raise hand feature, you can turn your screen on and wave at us. And we, again, will call you to unmute your mic and speak. If it is your first time experiencing local government, then I welcome you. Local government is really a powerful tool that we all should be using more of. And I hope that your experience tonight is a positive one and you walk away having learned something. Okay, so our first item on the agenda is open discussion. And this time of the evening is for anybody who has something that they wish to share with us that is not something that is already on the agenda. So if there's anybody in the room that has something of that nature, you are welcome to come to the lectern. And seeing none, I will offer the folks online a chance to raise your hand if you have something to share about an item that is not already on tonight's agenda.
No hands at this time.
All right, we see none. So moving on to our next agenda item, we do have a special presentation this evening from Dan Cleese, who is a member of our zoning hearing board. Dan is also a previous member of College Township Council. So Dan, welcome. And yeah, please come up to the lectern and thank you for attending. Dan will talk to us about the zoning hearing board's annual update.
Good evening. As the agenda states, this should be Ben Ellis tonight. I've done a great job the last several years on the zoning hearing board, making sure that Ben stays our chair. I was recently, in one of the past cycles, somebody decided I needed to be vice chair. And Ben was supposed to be here, but I'm filling in for Ben, who had to work late tonight. For those of you that aren't that familiar with local government, the zoning hearing board is one of the authorities, boards, and commissions that is appointed by the council. We have 5 members, and we only meet when necessary based on an appeal of a determination by our College Township, usually an appeal of the determination made by our College Township zoning officer. Ironically, or incidentally, our last report was exactly 1 year ago at this first meeting in September, and since then we have had 2 cases, both of which occurred within the village area of Lamont. At the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022, we had a Coombs/Spring Creek Presbyterian Church zoning hearing board meeting. And it's not technically a hearing, excuse me, the vernacular. I'm so used to the council and planning commission, so I have to, it's kind of vernacular when you're on zoning hearing board. So we had a hearing. Spring Creek Presbyterian Church was requesting to subdivide their property, and a single family home that was at the rear of the property was being requested to be subdivided from the remainder of the church. They were looking to sell it, and they wanted to have it as a single lot. As those of you that are familiar with the village may know, things like this in the village are somewhat challenging because a lot of the villages are R1, but many, if not most of the lots in the village don't meet the regulations for R1 development. So one of the things that, when it comes before the zoning hearing board, is to determine if they meet certain number of conditions, that we can grant them a variance. And in this case, we did grant the variance. The single-family home was, I assume, came through for subdivision.
Yes, it did.
And it has since then also, I've noticed, been renovated, and I assume someone was living there. The second one, just a block away, was this past summer, June and July. We had a hearing for Harold Altman, Inc. For those of you that remember, Harold Altman was a local painter, landscape painter from Lamont, and he had a studio in Lamont. And the studio and an adjoining property back pre-zoning were joined together into one lot. And the Harold Altman Incorporated was deciding they would like to separate the two and keep the original house and do something else with the former studio. We went through a rather lengthy discussion on both of these because you're trying to make a decision that respects the rule of township ordinances, and yet you're at the same time trying to be cognizant that not every house, lot, building, structure in the township is designed and built to those standards, especially things pre-ordinances, which was in the 70s, and especially things in the village of Lamont. In this case, there were several dimensional and setback variances that were requested, and we also approved that one. Anything I left out, Mark? Thank you. As I mentioned, we have 5 members. Ben Eltz is our chair. His term runs through 2025. I'm the vice chair, and I was just reappointed this past year, so I have until 2026. Sean Party is 2023. George Corey is 2024. And Stephen Lyncha, who is also a former council member, his term is up at the end of this year because I think I know he filled in for another person's term that moved out of the township. Also been noted in my notes that Steve took the duties of the zoning hearing board from the PA State Association of Township Supervisors this year, and at least 3 of the 5 of us have participated in that class. Our support team, in addition to Mark, our zoning officer, and Frank Scott, our zoning enforcement officer, Susan Hetzel is our support specialist and does an outstanding job at making sure everything is done because the zoning hearing board has a very, very strict date and timeline criteria that it has to meet. Think of us as the quasi-judicial branch of local government, but we don't arrest or throw anybody in jail, but we are charged with making decisions based on the facts that come before us. And then Jeff Stover is our solicitor and has been for a long time, and Jeff does a good job of taking our conversations and the questions we ask of the applicants and putting together an opinion for us to vote on. And that's all I have. Anybody has any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Cleese?
No, just appreciation for all you do.
Yeah. All right. Dustin Best, our 3rd council member this evening, joined earlier than expected. Welcome, Dustin. Do you have any comments or questions for Mr. Cleese?
I have none, thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, moving on to reports. First up is manager's update.
Manager's update. Couple of items that I will highlight that are outlined in the manager's update that was part of the packet material. Of course, Pike Street, our traffic calming construction program continues. Unfortunately, slightly slower than what we would like, but we are still relatively on track. And I think that the contractor has devised a plan to speed things along, especially once we get onto the other side of Pike Street. So you'll notice the cement trucks are out and pouring on a pretty regular basis at this point. If you've had a chance and have been brave enough to drive through Lamont on Pike Street and glance to your right, which is the side of the street that they're working on, you'll see that quite a bit of activity has occurred there already in terms of curbing and sidewalk, and certainly there was quite a bit of stormwater work that has been done. So that work continues, will continue at least through the end of October, but that's where we stand at the moment. The other item, we recently, and I reported on this the last time, the Dale Summit Small Area Plan. You will recall that we had an RFQ, request for qualifications, for consultants to submit to the township for the purposes of helping us advance the concept of form-based code in our existing commercial area and industrial area in the Dale Summit area of the township. And we do intend to initiate interviews here over the next 30 days. We've asked the firms to provide us with some additional materials to round out their applications so that everybody has submitted all similar materials. So that is ongoing. And the last item that I do want to mention here this evening is the Local Traffic Advisory Committee, LTAC, is planning a meeting coming up here on, I believe it is the 28th of September. And those meeting announcements to the neighborhood, the study neighborhood, which is the Center Hills Village areas, primarily the streets of Shamrock and Oak Ridge Avenue and portions of Squirrel Drive. Those notices will be sent out sometime this week, if they've not already
I think they're out.
been in the mail. So,
Great, thank you.
so folks can be expecting to receive those very, very soon in anticipation of that meeting. And that's all that I have at the moment. If there are any questions, I'm happy to respond.
Thanks, Adam. Any questions for the manager?
No, for me.
Dustin? Nope. Okay, great, thank you. All right, COG, Regional, County, and Liaison Reports. Paul, did you have anything?
Yes, actually, last week, the College Township IDA had a special meeting with the CBICC and the Center County Industrial Development Corporation. Another acronym to throw in there. It was the first meeting, Adam, correct me, in several years, certainly since the composition of the new IDA and the transition of leadership at CBICC and other things. So I was not able to attend the entire meeting, but I think it was a really good start at building a stronger relationship, since we do in fact partner on many of the loans and agreements and supports for the businesses, just kind of clarifying where each side is and where we're headed. Adam, was there anything that you'd like to add after I left in particular? But it felt to me
Other
like-
than the meeting ended up in a similar fashion, it was very productive. And I believe that there had been a few bumps in the road in terms of the relationship. I believe that most of those, and I think that it was borne out as a result of the meeting, were simply miscommunications of information. I think that both entities have a little bit of cleanup to do relative to better communicating back and forth with one another. But it was a very positive meeting, and I believe that just through our latest committee meetings that were held this week, that's already beginning to bear fruit. We had a very productive loan committee meeting, and we had the participation of the IDC's revolving loan chairman also participated. As a result, I think that we made some good progress. So I think it's already bearing fruit and very productive.
So things continue to improve on the IDA front. Seems to be making good progress. So any questions on that? I also have a public safety.
Any questions, Dustin?
No questions.
Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. The Public Safety Committee met this past Tuesday. It was a pretty short agenda. The only real item of note was an adjustment that has been proposed for the 2023 budget from the fire program. back when we did this ESCI assessment, it was always anticipated that at some point, our all-volunteer force would have to really bring on some more professional capacity due to a long-term trend in declining volunteer numbers and recruiting and those kind of things. The hope was that that would be more out into the future and we would be able to plan for that. However, this year, it's really clear that the volunteer numbers are down very significantly. They have not bounced back following the pandemic. So taking a look at coverage, capacity, it was decided that in order to not impact quality of service, that the recommendation is that we budget for 4 part-time persons to run as driver operators on the weekend hours. 12-hour shifts, 4 people, they would work every other weekend 1 day, which it provides coverage over that time period. It also relieves volunteer staff and would provide that capacity. At the same time, there is already an existing driver operator who would then transition into a supervisory position over those 4 people. So the budget impact is relatively minimal compared to having to hire another full-time equivalent person, as well as having someone work every weekend, 2 shifts every weekend. So from a coverage standpoint and from a safety standpoint, it seemed like a very reasonable proposal. Unfortunately, I think it's just the beginning of what we're going to have to make some really hard decisions moving forward as to how we continue to maintain the high quality of service that our fire services do provide, because the recruiting and the volunteer numbers are just not there right now, even with the students. So we as a committee approved unanimously passing along that recommendation to the finance and executive committees for those 4 part-time positions, as well as to finance, human resources, which Dustin, you'll be seeing that, and executive for the reclassification of that full-time equipment technician to a supervisory position. So that, and then also we talked a bit about an RFP for some water heaters in the engine bay that appear to have broken down yet again. We're assessing the need for doing some emergency purchases to keep the trucks from freezing in the winter. So shouldn't be too bad, but definitely something that was unexpected and will be absorbed in the operational budget. So
Thanks for that update.
yes.
Any questions, Dustin?
Yeah, just one question was, I'm assuming that there was some research done before asking to budget for those positions that yes, we think that there's interest in there would be people hired in those, right? Or are we just thinking that, well, we have a better chance of paying people than having volunteers?
Well, the concern is that the volunteers are not there to staff adequately on the weekends. During those periods. So there's still some work to be done between now and actually bringing those people on board. But this way we'll have it in the budget and can cover those shifts when we need it. It's a 12-hour shift, day shifts on Saturday and Sunday every weekend. And then the evening hours are covered by the volunteers who can staff that.
Right, yeah, and I understand it. I'm just wondering if we're barking up a tree that might not have any fruit on it. That's my only concern.
Oh, you mean with the applicant pool?
Because everyone's having problems and issues, filling positions no matter where you're at.
Yeah.
So I just wonder if there would be interest in those positions.
I asked that question of the chief, and he didn't feel like there would be difficulty in finding those positions.
That's all I have.
Sure.
All right, is that it?
That's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Dustin, did you have any COG regional meetings?
I had no meetings.
Okay, thank you. I had Climate Action and Sustainability Committee meeting. I guess the biggest thing that I did send a written report to everybody. There's going to be another budget adjustment request going through Finance Committee for roughly $15,000 for a consulting service for our next regional refuse and recycling contract. I had several questions about why we would need a consultant when we haven't needed one in the past. Essentially, the answer is just how much the industry is changing. And so we're getting out of our scope. It's not what it was, even 10 years ago. People are having a hard time, because of all the consolidation that's happened within the companies, people are having a hard time getting competitive bids. So this is just, the motion we made was specifically just a motion to request $15,000 put in the budget. I'll also point out the recycling and refuse budget is not the same as the other COG budgets. They collect a recycling fee, and it can easily cover this $15,000. So this won't look like an increase in anybody's contribution. But even still, I did make sure that we added to the motion that this was in no way an approval of the consultant or of moving forward with a consultant. This is just budgeting for it should we decide that down the road. One other piece I will say is that there is a potential rate increase coming down the pipeline for Center County Recycling and Refuse Authority. You'd think it was maybe because of gas prices, but surprisingly, to my surprise, it wasn't. It's because of wage increases, the same wage situation going on with truckers is the same that they're experiencing with their drivers. So they lost a lot of drivers to better wages, and they're finding that they really had to increase what they were willing to pay. So therefore, the cost per stop to pick up our trash and recycling went up. And that's allowed to go up through our memorandum of understanding with Center County Recycling and Refuse Authority. They have a reopener, and they've used that now, so there will be discussions on coming up with a new increased rate. I don't know what the increase will be. We will make it as least impactful as we possibly can. I mean, that's our seat at the table, is we represent the residents. So that's it from that committee. Any questions?
No.
Okay, great. Staff, PC. PC, is PC here? No?
No, I thought Ed would make it tonight, but he's not.
Okay.
But I can tell you what we did.
Yeah, great.
So Steve Bear came and gave us a great presentation. This is under other matters that at the beginning of the Planning Commission year decided that we want to bring in some more educational speakers. So Steve Bear was our first one. And
Oh,
he
wonderful.
did such a great job, and everyone's just so happy that he came. We also discussed the PED plan and the remand, so that's back in front of council this evening. And Ed Maxwell and John Sepp were present to propose the rezoning of a portion of the industrial forest property to industrial, which the Planning Commission recommended we continue to move that forward. So
Did that come before us?
Yes.
Okay, was it like another one?
That was like an informal plan, wasn't it?
Yeah, but then it went to Planning Commission. They wanted to bring it here first. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
So it will go through the DRI process, and we're going to do a quick analysis of it before bringing it back to council in November.
Okay, great. Diversity, equity, and inclusion reports. Dustin, I have one. So this is thanks to Penn State for putting this out into my attention sphere. So I'm just going to read it. This is on Penn State's website. I'm citing my source. This Hispanic Heritage Month starts on today, September 15th, through October 15th, and it is a time to honor and celebrate the historic background, culture, heritage, and many influences of the Hispanic and Latina community throughout the years. In September 1968, Congress authorized President Lyndon B. Johnson to proclaim National Hispanic Heritage Week, observed during the week that included September 15th and September 16th. The observance was expanded in 1989 by Congress to a month-long celebration, September 15th to October 15th. America celebrates the culture and traditions of those who trace their roots to Spain, Mexico, and the Spanish-speaking nations of Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. September 15th was chosen as the starting point for the celebration because it is the anniversary of independence of 5 Latin American countries: Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. In addition, Mexico and Chile celebrate their Independence Days on September 16th and September 18th, respectively. So I just want to make sure we're all aware of that. Yeah, my pleasure. Is there anything else from the public under diversity, equity, and inclusion? I see none in the room and online. Oh, I do see a hand. Daniel Hughes. Daniel Hughes, do you want to unmute and share?
I think that's the hand.
Oh, that's the hand on the computer.
Yeah. The yellow is.
Never mind, Daniel. Sorry to scare you. Daniel's like, what?
Should I move that?
No, I know what it is.
Okay.
Well, we had a moment. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. The real one is in the Monday final packet now, right? Okay, great. So this evening, our consent agenda consists of CA1, approval of September 1st, 2002 regular council meeting minutes, CA2, A through quadruple A, 79 emails regarding the casino between the dates of August 29th and September 12th. CA3, receipt and approval of the following correspondence as well. A letter from Gordon Kaufman III dated August 22nd, 2022 regarding a skate park. B, an email from Bob Keller, September 1st regarding Lamont Road construction fiasco. CA3C, letter from Borough of State College, July 19th regarding resolution 1323, protect access to healthcare. D, email from Neil Brandt, September 2nd regarding status of State College Borough College Township Thompson Woods Preserve Oversight Board. E, email from Christian Kerpiel Wakamia dated September 3rd regarding winter maintenance of paths to Spring Creek Elementary. F, letter from Penn Environment, September 6th regarding an initiative to protect Keystone State's natural heritage. G, email from Bruce Grinder, September 7th regarding refuse collection pilot program. H, press release from CATA, September 2nd regarding game day shuttles. CA4, approval of the following action items. A, 2023 minimum municipal obligation certification for Township's retirement plan. B, engineering services contract with Norris and Associates, $12,000 for pedestrian bridge heating specification work. Would anybody like any of those pulled?
Can I just pull CA3E for just a real quick question?
That's the one I would have pulled. Dustin?
I just want to pull CA3A and CA3F just for questions.
Great. All right. Those are pulled. Can I have a motion to accept the remainder of the consent agenda?
So moved.
I second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. Motion passes. Okay. CA3E.
My question was, when is it part of, as the budgeting process, when we figure out what our maintenance schedule is and what is the expectation, will we be having that in November again or October?
Yes. No, it should be in October, I believe. Budgets are due.
Yeah, the draft budget numbers will be assembled during October. You will end up with a draft budget proposal the end of October, the very beginning of November, prior to, I believe, our second meeting of November. There will be our traditional workshop
Right.
for the budget. at which time, we'll be able to add, delete, et cetera, make modifications to the document.
Okay.
Then at our second meeting in November, I don't know, Jen, if you know what that happens to be off the top of your head. It might be, I'm thinking it's the 18th of November, possibly.
It is November 17th.
17th. I was close, which is amazing.
I could have figured that out.
That we'll actually be adopting a tentative budget. And then there's a 20-day inspection period, which sets up a final approval for the budget in December.
Yeah, my only request would be if we can figure out what the costs might be of changing our level of service for those paths.
Yeah, because we did, if you remember, council did direct us to contract those additional paths last year, so we do have those costs. And I have reached out to the contractor that we've used in the past for any updated numbers so that we have good budget numbers.
We had also talked about reaching out to the school district to see if they had any interest in partnering with us on that specific portion that belongs to them.
Yes, we did. We didn't actually hook up during the winter time. The person contacted me after winter was over, but we actually did go ahead and take it down into the Foldman Field and around. The only
Okay.
thing we didn't do is right in front of the doors of any of the entrances, which we wouldn't have anyway, because that would be their property and their staff to do.
Okay.
So we did take it on, but we can certainly reach out to them to see if they would want to,
Right, we can always contract for it and then see
if
if,
they're willing to.
instead of just
backfeed
not
us.
servicing it.
Right.
Right, no, I appreciate that approach. Is Christian on here tonight? No? Okay. Can we get back to him and let him know that this will be up for discussion and when it will be up for discussion? Thank you. Do you feel
That was it?
well
Yeah,
answered?
thank you for being on top of it. That's what-
Great. So how about CA3A, Dustin?
Yeah, so my question just, again, is the letter about the Action Sports Park that's happening in Point Park. So is this something that we're gonna see come across? Is, Mr. Kaufman come in and give a presentation or something? What's the next steps after this?
Yeah, I think that's council's pleasure. I would encourage council to set aside some time, probably as a special presentation, to hear Mr. Kaufman maybe describe the project and what they're thinking in terms of a degree of participation. So I think it's entirely appropriate. And we can work with Mr. Kaufman to identify an appropriate time over the next couple of meeting dates where he might be able to be present. I'm thinking it might be later in October, but
Okay.
that if that we'll touch base with him, and if that works for him, we can get him in at that time.
Just a real quick question. Do we know if Center Region Parks and Rec has any involvement with this, or is it completely a private endeavor?
I don't believe that they do, but to be honest, I am somewhat uncertain of that.
Okay. Yeah, I just was curious if anybody knew offhand. I thought it was more of strictly a private endeavor.
And
Okay.
does that answer your question, Dustin?
Yes, it does, thank you.
Great. And F?
Yeah, F's along the same lines. Do we want to take this any further as a council? I received, and I'm sure everyone else did, I received an individual email saying, will you endorse this? I didn't know if we wanted as a council to, take action on this and sign off as entire council, but that was something that we wanted to look at again a little bit closer. That was my only question, process related.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you pulling that out. I too received the email, I'm sure we all did, inviting us into that. I think since I'm running the zoo today, I would like to see that as brought before us, even as a quick agenda item to decide or decide not to.
Sure.
Thank you.
Wildlife corridors, yeah. I mean, that was part of the conversation with the land from the Aspen Heights, was in order to preserve the wildlife corridor through Slab Cabin.
Right, and after going to the PennDOT presentation for elected officials about the highway,
Makes more sense.
that makes it makes sense why they're doing this,
Sure.
why they're pushing for this. So, yeah, thank you, Dustin. I realized I did not open it up to the public for comment about our consent agenda. Does anybody have anything they would like to state, even though we've already accepted the whole of it? I apologize. No? Anybody online?
I'm not seeing any hands.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to make a motion to
Oh, right, yeah,
accept
let's
the-
move, great, perfect. Go
Yeah.
go for it.
I'll move to accept the remaining items on the consent agenda as presented.
I second.
Any comment, any further comment? Further comment from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
and I hear none opposed. It's easy to count 3, or 2, as it were. All right, thank you. All right, that's it for consent agenda. So most of you will be happy to hear, I plan to move OB3 up to our first item in old business. So we will start with draft frequently asked questions for proposed Nittany Casino. I'd like to just make a quick comment regarding this agenda item. I think I'm correct in that a lot of you are here for that topic this evening, or something close to that topic. So what we have here on the agenda is specifically the frequently asked question white page that is in our agenda packet. So what we are going to do is discuss that as a council first, and then I will open it up for comment about the frequently asked questions piece of paper. If you have comments on that, you're welcome to talk about it. If you have comments not related to that, but still related to the casino, what I will do is offer a time slot, a time amount when we're done discussing the frequently asked questions for people who have other concerns regarding the casino to share those concerns. The way that we'll do that at that time, and regarding the frequently asked questions as well, is a bit of a, same thing that Rich did last meeting, which was we will hear comments from College Township residents first in the room, and then College Township residents online, then Center County residents in the room, Center County residents online, and then finally, if there happens to be someone here from outside of Center County, they are welcome to have their turn. So I appreciate your patience. Thank you for sticking with us thus far. I hope it wasn't, 35 minutes. That's not so bad. So at least not in our line
By
of
our
work.
standards.
Maybe for you it is. Right. So here we go. I will open it up to Mr. Bloom.
Yes, okay. So the agenda item before you tonight builds off of your meeting. It's on September 1st, and this is your second review of the draft frequently asked questions, as well as the draft timeline of significant events associated with the proposed casino. Just as a quick overview, the document that has the most significant changes was the draft frequently asked questions. Either through new entries or expansion and revisions of the answers that you had previously viewed, we tried to encapsulate all the comments that we heard from council and the larger discussion at your last meeting. The timeline document itself really only has one change that was brought forward by council, and it was an expanded explanation under the entry for August 30th, 2019, clarifying at the time of passage of Act 63 that there were no Category 4 casino license available for auction. As discussed previously, and this was talked about several times throughout the course of your discussion, these documents are viewed as living documents. We recognize that we're dealing with a process that continues to evolve, both here locally as well as the discussion with the Gaming Control Board. So the intent is the documents you see tonight and review tonight will continue to be informed by that process and by actions taken here locally as well as the Gaming Control Board. One of those items that we know is currently pending is the answer from our solicitor, Louis Glantz, in regards to the letter that is included in this agenda item. So included as OB3C is the township's request for a legal opinion from Solicitor Glantz. And as you have reviewed that letter, you recognize there's multiple questions there, multiple layers that we're looking for. So this will be a pretty comprehensive legal opinion from Solicitor Glantz. And as noted, that will inform several of the FAQs and may actually result in an expansion moving forward. So with that kind of quick overview, what staff is requesting this evening is for you to review and provide staff with any additional comments on both draft documents. And if at your pleasure, to authorize staff to upload the FAQs and timeline to the township website and continue to make edits as the process continues to evolve. So with that, Carla, I will stop and turn it back over to you.
All right, thanks, Mike. First of all, I just want to say I very much appreciate the work that you've put into the frequently asked questions. There is a lot of information there, and it's also well written, which I appreciate. So thank you so much. I will start with Paul. Do you have any comments, questions, concerns?
Are we also gonna talk about some of the other, like, what has happened since our last meeting in terms of correspondence with the solicitor and those kind of things? Should we just talk about this first?
Well, can we
and
just
then
stick
come
to
back?
frequently asked questions?
Sure.
And then,
Absolutely.
yeah, and then we'll dig into kind of what we're all circling around CA3, or CA, OB3C.
Right, I just wanted to make sure as we go through this.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, so one of the things that I wanted to suggest was that the entry under can College Township deny the land development plan for the proposed casino? It's mentioned, I believe, in the timeline, but not in this item. These are only for external improvements to the property. There was nothing interior to the building that was or is part of that land development plan that we had an opportunity to weigh in on. I just think it's important to clarify that here as well, just to make it clear that that was not a decision point or an inflection point in terms of go, no go with the casino. I think there's, based on the correspondence we've seen, there's some confusion that remains about that. Another thing that I wanted to bring up, let me just find it here real quick. In the timeline, August 30th, 2019, the Act 63 conversation, in the timeline, you actually added that there were no Category 4 casino licenses available at that time, but it is not in the FAQ itself. It's only in the timeline. Can we replicate that where appropriate? I think that would make things a little bit clearer in terms of what I was asking about. And sorry, I'm giving you more to do here, but there's a couple more. One is the September 2nd entry where it talks about the identification of the 15-mile radius around Unionville Borough. I think that would be a great opportunity to add which municipalities would fall within that radius, potentially. We've discussed Benner, Spring, ourselves. I don't know if there are others, but
Potter?
would Potter fall within 15 miles? I don't
Unionville, I'm
think
not
so.
sure.
Unionville. Anyway, I just think it would be nice to have, you know, in addition to
No.
College Township, these other municipalities could potentially be host given the current bid.
Yeah, and that's an easy addition, Paul, so I absolutely, we've built a base map as part of the FAQs. What we'll do is ask Shane to put a pinpoint and draw a radius around it. And-
Okay.
Yeah, that's not a problem at all.
Let's see, there was one other, but I think it's more related to the conversation about sort of what's next. But yeah, mainly the exterior clarification, the lack of licenses being available, and the radius. Those were the top three for me, and I'm sure other, you know, smaller details may come out. Just kind of making sure that the timeline and the FAQ are in sync.
Yeah, appreciate that.
But yeah, thank you very much. I thought, you know, to echo Carla's comments, they're very thorough and incorporated a lot of what we had.
Succinctly.
succinctly, yes.
Dustin, how do you feel about Paul's suggested updates?
I think Paul's spot on. I like his suggestions. I really have nothing additional to add except that I think this is a great document. And I do commend the staff for putting it together. I really do. I know I'd asked for the links embedded, and I think they're great. So thank you.
Great. All right, so you're not looking for a motion, you're just looking for council to say, make those few tweaks and stick it on the website.
Right, at the end of the day, however you care to do that,
Okay,
just need the head nod.
great. Before we nod, I will open it up to folks in the room. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at what we're talking about, the idea behind this, the motivation for us to do this work and post this on the website is to make sure that we're doing what we can to make sure that everybody has all the information that we know and organized and offered for the public to see. If there's anything else that you'd like to see on the frequently asked questions document or the timeline or something that you potentially disagree with, now's a good opportunity to come up and say something. We don't see anybody jumping to their feet in the room. Any hands online about the frequently asked questions document?
1 second here.
No, there's not that.
I'm seeing none, no.
Okay.
May I, before we
Yeah,
make
absolutely.
a motion,
Go
just
ahead.
ask, would it be possible for council to see just a quick, final draft before it gets posted? Because I don't have any problem with it, I just want to,
Yeah,
make sure
have
that
final eyes on it.
doesn't confuse anything, or I'm sure it won't, but
Great.
I'd love to see it one more
We
version.
can do a final.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, shall I give the head nod?
Yes.
Great. I shall nod.
Okay.
The official chair's nod.
The official nod. All right, so I would like to maybe have staff offer what we've done, where we've been since the last time we all came together. There had been a comment from council requesting, all the way back to the last meeting for anybody who wasn't here, maybe specifically what council requested of staff. Thanks.
Sure. As a result of the last meeting and the conversation and the discussion and the comments that were received, council had directed staff to do a couple of things. First was to compile a letter to the solicitor with a request for a legal opinion on a number of items. And that was completed. I had actually had a phone conversation with the solicitor the day, 2 days after our meeting. He happened to be on vacation over that Labor Day weekend and that week to come, but we had talked about that on the phone. The letter followed to identify with some specificity the types of things that the council was interested in seeing. And the letter is part of the packet, but just to pull out some of the more immediate or more important topics that we were looking for clarification from the solicitor on. The question directly is, if council were to write the Gaming Control Board stating that a Category 4 casino would be unwelcome in the township, are there any likely or potential legal or financial implications for the township? If so, what might those be, and what might be the magnitude of said legal or financial implications? Similarly, if such a letter was to be written, would that decision by council have the potential for any unintended consequences to the township? If so, what might those be? Then council asked for some additional information that was not directly related to those or that particular issue of writing a letter, which dealt with understanding or better understanding the Gaming Control Board process going forward. What happens if in fact there is an approval? Are there additional steps? For example, before a license is technically issued, any distinctions? We were looking to get that clarified. Also, what happens if a Category 4 license is denied? What does the Gaming Control Board do at that point? What does that process look like? So we asked those additional questions, and then finally, we asked about an opinion relative to the current Commonwealth Court case, which we know very little about at this point, that was brought by the Cordish Group with respect to the Category 4 license determination by the Gaming Control Board. And there were some specific questions there that we had asked relative to that. So that letter, that was verbally conveyed to the solicitor. The letter followed up with the specificity. In conversation with the solicitor today, who is back in town, I understand that sometime early next week, he anticipates having the answers to these questions and would be available then for discussion with council. So that part of it was one element that was discussed as a result of the meeting on September 1st. The other part of that was staff was asked to begin the initial exploration of moving forward with a impact study of our own, and we have made some degree of progress on that. Lindsay assisted greatly in this regard. We have reached out and made contact with the other two Category 4 communities that we have not visited, the Springettsbury Township Hollywood York Casino at the Galleria Mall, and also with the Category 4, I think that's also Hollywood in Morgantown, which is in Berks County. So that is Carnarvon Township is the community in which, the township in which the community in Morgantown exists. And Morgantown is a census designated place, just like Lamont is a census designated place within College Township. So the township is obviously involved in this process. So we've made those contacts. We've also made contact, we've had conversations with State College Police Department Chief Gardner with respect to the ability to access and to gain access to crime code information. You may recall each and every year, usually the Chief of Police comes to College Township. We contract our services with the State College Borough Police Department, and we receive a breakdown of Part 1 and Part 2 crimes. All of those crimes, and there's a variety of designations within each part that is reported, but those are part of what is referred to as the UCR, the Uniform Crime Report. Though that data is typically generated and reported in the same form and fashion by all law enforcement departments in the United States. Now, there is a question about whether some of the smaller departments actually complete those, but the idea and the initial conversation was, what was the availability of that information? Would we be able to reach out and have those conversations with those individual police departments? So I think we have set the stage for moving forward in that respect, with respect to some of the crime statistics, that we'll be able to get that information and hopefully be able to do some type of meaningful comparison with that. We also have the prospect of chief of police to chief of police communication. Both Springettsbury Township as well as Carnarvon have their individual police departments, so they are not served by state police, unlike Hempfield Township in Westmoreland, which was the Category 4 facility that we did visit, which is actually a much larger community. They have about 45,000 residents. They're entirely served by state police. In speaking with the chief, he noted that the state police likewise complete the UCR reports, but those are typically broken down by both barracks and troop. And so there will be a little bit of additional research that we need to do before we're going to be able to actually access or zero in on the type of data that we're looking for. So we have made some progress. We've also scoped out a number of other items that we believe that we can develop with the other municipalities, in particular, with all three of the municipalities, both Hempfield, Carnarvon as well as Spring-Itsbury Township, and that has to do with use permits, types of activity, property values, things like that. So for an initial foray into this, I think that we've made some progress. There's a lot more to do, but I've been pretty pleased with the staff effort in terms of making some inroads there. So I do believe that we are diligently moving forward with the assignment that we were provided by council.
Great, thank you. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. No, it helps a great deal.
Yeah, it's a great
Real quick
start.
question, the state police reporting, can it be searched by location? Because we're talking about very specific locations, so while they may report by barracks and the others, it should be, I would think, relatively easy to get those UCR data for individual locations. Have we
Of
reached out?
calls specifically, right?
Yeah, I mean, because if, normally you'd have to search by the barracks and then do all that sort of thing, which covers a large geography. We're talking about a very small geography. We're talking about a building-sized geography. So have we reached out to the state, or can Chief Gardner perhaps reach out to the state police?
Well, that's a distinct possibility. No, we have not gotten to the state police element yet. That's actually to be determined.
Okay.
And that may in fact be a bit of some of the challenge in any of the UCR numbers, depending upon the size of the community involved. I think Hempfield's probably the most extreme situation because it's such a much larger municipality. Spring-Itsbury is sizable, but it's not, it certainly is larger than Carnarvon is. So if Carnarvon, in fact, as a smaller municipality, is utilizing the UCR documents, and we've gotten to the point where we've pulled up the site, and it's a little less than user-friendly, but that said, we have started trying to plow through that information. So some of this is to be determined.
And just, I left off the prelude to this, which is that the state police are responsible for what happens within the casino footprint itself, whereas the township and the municipal police departments are responsible for what happens outside the building.
Except
in a
for
sense.
where state
Except
police
for
is
when they have both.
the only police, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. Do we have any idea of a timeline for when we'll get some numbers back to us? I mean, and can we do it piecemeal, like as your, or would you rather do it report?
No, no, I mean, I think if in fact we have resolved a particular issue, for example, if we are able to resolve the crime statistics and we have that completed, we could bring that back, because that's an important element, and it carries its own weight. So I don't have difficulty in sharing that as we go forward. I'm just not sure I'm comfortable giving you a time frame at this point.
Well,
when
when I say time frame to you, you think I mean the minute and the day, when I really mean like months, weeks.
Oh, well, I'm thinking weeks.
Okay.
Okay? Right.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, weeks.
Okay.
3, 4,
That's what I'm asking. Right,
I
okay.
mean, but some of this will happen sooner than others. And as we have wrapped up certain aspects of what we can find the data for and properly compare, we can report back to council and then assemble it all as a product.
Okay.
I was just curious, if you don't mind.
There are only 3 of us, so.
Okay, all right, this is a
It's not gonna get out of hand with just the.
It might help if you reached out to the manager or assistant manager of those townships and just asked them, did they do something similar? Did they
a good
do some
point.
sort of a local impact study? Did they do a before and after? Because that was one of the conversations that we had, was that regardless of what happens, we would like to have this. Even if this is approved, even if there's nothing we can do to stop this, we still want to have that baseline data. We still want to have that impact study so that we know and can track moving forward whether there is any negative impact. So I think it would be worthwhile just to reach out and see.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can do that. In fact, yeah, Lindsay made the initial contact to let them know we're coming.
Oh,
kind of
good.
thing.
I thought there was a township manager hotline.
Yeah, you would think, right? But
There's a
no.
planner
Well,
You need
So-
one.
But if there's an award-winning manager, call it.
Well,
Oh, here we
that's,
go.
they always pick up.
Yeah, they always pick up.
Dustin, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, as far as Adam's update, yeah, I don't, no, I'm waiting. I'm waiting to hear what results we have. I'm eagerly waiting to see what we can find out. That's really all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. We have put some thought, so the solicitor plans to get back to us Tuesday, Wednesday
Correct.
of this next coming week. How does council feel about having, as I understand it, the solicitor's findings, we would have an executive session to meet with the solicitor, find out the legal ramifications. And then we would be able to make a public meeting either October 6th or beforehand, depending on how we
What the
could,
timelines are.
what the
things
timelines are.
Yeah.
Does that sound doable to you, Dustin? Something later next week, meeting with the township solicitor in an executive session?
Yeah, that does. I guess my question to follow on that is right for us to receive his opinion and say, well, okay, we're within our legal bounds if we decide to send a letter, right?
Or not, right. Well, we
Yeah,
wouldn't
or
make that
not.
decision in the executive session. We
Yeah.
would just receive
Okay.
the information.
Right. Anything that-
Yeah. As far as I just did want to say, as something, as far as the decision on whether or not we commit to a letter, I just really want to understand if there is a majority of folks in the township that are in favor or opposed. So I don't know what the best mechanism that might be for that. Do we simply send a survey out to every address? These are just some thoughts I'm having, as we're looking ahead. I know a lot of folks and a lot of letters are throwing out there and articles are throwing out there that there's a large portion of folks, and I get that. But is it really a majority? And I don't know how best to gauge that. Because I want to represent the majority constituents as best I can. And that's where I'm coming from.
You have a comment? Go ahead.
I do. I mean, in my mind, that's kind of putting the cart before the horse in a way. It is our responsibility to decide how to act once we know what our parameters are. If we send a letter and it exposes us to significant financial or legal impact on behalf of the township, that's my major concern. That's sort of a gate that we would have to pass through. And once we pass through that gate, knowing whether we could or could not do that, then I think it's appropriate to ask whether there's majority of council that would approve or support doing such a thing.
I think you misunderstand me, Paul. I'm not saying majority of council. I'm trying to gauge the majority. I'm trying to gauge the residents of College Township.
Sure.
Is there really a majority of residents opposed to this, or is it a minority? I looked today at the various polls. I looked at a couple articles today, and while there be a significant amount of people that are opposed to this and folks that are opposed to this, is it really a majority? And that's where I come from. I'm trying to represent the majority of the residents in the township.
Yeah, and I think Paul's right. So we hear you loud and clear over here, Dustin, about that. And I do think that's a good question. I feel like maybe Adam probably has some thoughts up his sleeve, as he maybe not. But that aside for a quick second, I think Paul's follow-up to that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, is what we hear coming from you is that you wouldn't feel comfortable sending a letter without knowing what the township wants, the majority of constituents would like to see. Paul may feel differently, Eric may feel another way, Rich, so there's
Yeah.
two majorities. You're both talking about different majorities, which makes sense. But the first step still is meeting with the solicitor this week.
Right.
And how do you feel about meeting with the solicitor this week?
Yeah, I'm in favor of meeting with the solicitor.
Or
But
next week, sorry.
my comment my comment following that before is saying, if to me, right, gauging the overall and getting a good, accurate opinion of the residents of College Township is something that I think I would like to have before talking to the solicitor, right? So I kind of probably opposite of Paul and his thought process on that. But
You'd like to have
that's kind of why I made that comment.
Dustin, your comment is that you'd like to have a plan as to how to do that, or you'd like to actually accomplish that before meeting with the solicitor?
I'd like to, if we could get moving on something that, maybe just, I know surveys are only as good as the people that fill them out, but, at least it's something, as a data point to say, hey, simple question, are you opposed or in favor of the casino? Do you support or oppose the casino?
Okay.
Regardless of my own personal feelings, and I'm trying to, represent the township as a whole, right? And I don't feel like I don't have as much information from folks that aren't speaking out as I'd like to have.
Okay, I hear you. Adam had a comment just a moment ago, so.
Well, all that I was going to tell you was the unfortunate circumstances of second-class township community, things that you can't do. Unlike some of our first-class townships that function under a different set of rules and regulations as handed down to us by the Commonwealth. We do not have referendum or recall capabilities as a second-class township. That would be something in a first-class township, in a borough situation, in a home rule municipality, that typically is found in those charters, which gives the ability on a very structured basis, but it gives the ability to have non-binding referendums and to kind of get a gauge and take a pulse. We do not have that at our disposal. So unfortunately, not being a home rule municipality, being governed by the second-class township code, that just is not something that is available to us. In my way of thinking, that would be the ideal situation.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
To do something other than a referendum type question. I'm honestly not, I'll have to give that some thought, because that's not something that we have done in the past. I'm not suggesting it can't be done. On the other hand, I do think that it is fraught with a number of issues, not the least of which is timing, in terms of being able to do something that is effectual, that gets to the heart of the matter that you're trying to address.
Statistically significant numbers when you're talking about 10,000 residents is a lot of.
Yeah, I mean, it would take some design, and again, I'm completely just thinking off the top of my head here at this point, but I mean, I understand the notion, and I understand the concept. I do think it would be difficult, but I need to give it some more thought. I just am not prepared to provide an answer.
And I don't think waiting to hear the solicitor's opinion, and this is my feeling on it, is waiting to hear the solicitor's opinion until after we've been able to pull the majority of the township. Given that the solicitor's opinion is supposed to be ready Tuesday, I would like to meet to hear the solicitor's opinion.
Yeah, just to clarify, a referendum or survey or anything would be moot if the solicitor came back and told us that writing such a letter would expose the township to significant legal or financial exposure. That, to me, is a very difficult position to be in, because if we're very likely to lose a lawsuit and a lot of money and it still gets built, where are we? That's my concern.
Yeah, I mean, I carry the same concern. My ideal layout of the timeline of this is next week at some point, we're able to pull together an executive session. An executive session is not a public meeting. It's where we talk about personnel matters, legal matters, things of that nature. But we would not be making any decisions in the executive session unless they were legal decisions with our lawyer, but we would make any township decisions in that setting. We're then looking at October 6th as our next township meeting. Should there be enough time, depending on what the solicitor says, right? There may be enough time between that meeting and October 6th to hold a special meeting without all of council being here and being able to pull out calendars. I couldn't even pretend to make a start on that should it come to fruition. Just one moment, I'll open it up to the public pretty shortly here. So that's where I'm leaning. I think I hear Dustin loud and clear that his timeline seems, he would like to take a different trajectory. Paul, how do you feel? Do I feel echoey? Right.
Yes, it is echoing.
Okay.
I don't think we
Madam Chair.
can make a decision until we hear from our solicitor as to what we can and can't do.
Okay, so next step solicitor, and then we make another
request
meeting
has been
decision
made.
at that,
Yeah.
at that time. Okay. All right, so I
Madam
appreciate,
Chair?
sorry, Dustin, go ahead.
Yeah, if I may. I respectfully disagree with you, Paul. I don't think it's a moot point to try to give a voice to everybody in the township. And that's what I'm trying to accomplish. Because what I hear, what I read, we have folks that say, hey, I never had a say back in 2017. I didn't know this was going on. Now we know this is going on. So, I would really like to ask the solicitor. I think, let's talk to the solicitor. Can we float that idea and say, what kind of power do we have to, take a poll and just see, what is the opinion of the folks in the township?
That seems like a question we could ask the solicitor next week. Sure. Yeah. And I don't think anybody disagrees with you, Dustin, about the idea. It's just a matter of.
I don't disagree.
Right. I think in my understanding, it's just a matter of timing. And process. Yeah. Okay. So I'll open it up to council again. I just want to give the public, I'm going to set it at 20 minutes. You are limited to 5 minutes each, so if you want to share your time with others, maybe keep it to lower than that so that there can be enough of you to speak. Try to, if you agree with something that's already been said, I am perfectly fine with people doing little applauses on the screen or, a little yep, I agree. If it makes you feel like you don't also have to get up and say the same thing, I also think that. I like to see if, maybe a roarous cheer is not necessarily appropriate in this setting, but some way of letting us know that yes, I agree with that as well is perfectly acceptable while I am chair. So I will start with people in the room that live in College Township. I don't see anybody online that lives in College Township. All right, I see Joan Bouchard. Please, you can unmute yourself and state your name just in case it's not the same name on the screen.
I'm Joan Bouchard, and I live at the Village at Penn State in Patton Township. And I have some questions based on.
Okay, please pause, Joan. You live in Patton Township?
I'm sorry. Repeat that.
Do you live in College Township?
No, I'm sorry. I just said I live in Patton Township.
Okay,
at the Village at Penn
that's
State.
what I thought you said. So right now we're just opening it to College Township. If nobody.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you say that.
I'm sorry. Maybe I'm too far away from the mic. I can hear myself too loudly, but maybe you can't hear me loudly enough, so I apologize. Is anybody?
Okay, I'll wait.
Okay. Thank you so much, Joan. Is anybody online from College Township wish to speak? Great. Dorothy, please state your name slowly for our note takers.
Okay. My name is Dottie Sandusky, and I've lived in College Township since 1969, and I love our township. I'm just very surprised that something could go this far without us really knowing about it. I don't understand why we weren't able to vote on it when they decided they were gonna do what they did. It's scary to think what things might come into our township. I am very opposed to the casino. I think I went to the meeting that was at the Penn Stater, and it's all about money. And I don't want to see more crime and drugs and what it'll do for our youth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dottie. I appreciate you coming and speaking with us tonight. Anybody else from College Township? I see Alicia Hughes. Please state your name slowly in case I didn't do a great job.
You are right. My name is Alicia Hughes,
Thank you.
and I moved here from a town that actually had a casino, and it is devastating. I can't even stress what bringing that into a college town, in a peaceful town, in a very family-oriented town, what that would do. I am disturbed that it did get this far and that us and the public were not aware of it. I've been hearing people say that the meetings were kept pretty quiet, which is very disturbing. I do know what a Category 4 casino is, and I do know what it can do to a family, because it did it to mine. And it's unconscionable. And I am asking that you guys do that letter, that you do send the letter in before the deadline. We need this not to happen. It's destructive and it's upsetting. And that's what I had to say.
Thank you, Alicia. I appreciate your comments, and I'm sorry that people feel as if things were kept quiet. I hope that you see the way that we run our meetings, that is never our intention. I'm sorry that that is the way that you perceived it. Anybody else from College Township, specifically? Mr. Hatfield? Will you please state your name and the municipality in which you live?
Yes, David Hatfield, College Township.
Thank you.
And there's no need to leave a long comment, but I echo the previous two, and also just concerned not only about the financial impact, what that will bring in, but even I have two teenagers, just one recently learning how to drive, another one soon, and just even concerned about the alcohol consumption, things that will bring in, just multiple potential dangers, as well as just the negative impact all aboard. And in addition to that, my dad almost lost his life due to a gambling addiction. And so I just see no reason in any way it could be helpful to the township. We could find many other better options for that space. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And thank you, Andrew, for adding your thumbs up. I see that as an agreement, so I appreciate the interaction. I see another person.
Carol.
Carol, please state your name slowly and the municipality in which you live.
Carol Camargo, and I live in College Township.
Thank you.
And I'm in agreement with what has been said so far. I'm very much opposed to the casino, and I think that it would really damage this town a lot.
All right, thank you, Carol, for your comments. I see Kristen. Please state your name slowly and the municipality in which you live.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Kristen Bakumini, and I live in College Township. And so, as you know, I oppose the casino already. But I understand, Dustin, your thoughts. The only concern, I know you, Carlo, that you mentioned was timing. And I just don't know if there is time, because the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board meets for their hearing about the casino on October 19th. And so that letter that we plan to send, or hopefully plan to send, would really have to be decided by and done by October 6th to make sure that they get that on time. I know that we gathered a ton of petition signatures against the casino way back that we sent directly to the Pennsylvania Game Control Board with one of their earlier hearings to try to get them to deny the license, and then it's just been postponed since then. But as I mainly conducted the online petition and to get signatures that way. But I know when we had people on foot going around through College Township and other townships too, they estimated that 90% of people were opposed, of people that they talked to. So, and of course there's a strong presence of people opposed at these meetings and speaking out. So I would definitely bet that the majority are opposed to it. But I mean, I'm not against, of course, doing a survey. I don't know how that would be done in a short amount of time, but the letter really is valuable if you're speaking for the people that are coming here and showing up and trying to make this clear that we don't want it here. But just, yeah, I mean, I think it's clear that the opposition is strong enough in the township. And I think because of the time frame, I'm just going to encourage you to write that letter, unless you can find something that's super quick to get some response. But similar to how other people have mentioned, a lot of people don't even know about it. So they'll be starting from ground one, like trying to get educated, which is something we've been trying to do for months, even almost a year, if not more than that, once we started to know about it and the word spread. So I'm here to just reinforce that timing is of the essence, and to make that statement that based on our experience talking to people and our efforts, that the majority of people in this township are opposed.
Thank you, Ms. Bachumini. All right, anybody else from College Township? I do see somebody waving.
Oh.
Go ahead and state your name slowly for us and the township in which you live.
Mr. Smith, you're muted.
Mr. Smith. Yeah, I can't read you from there. Steve.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, there you are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stephen Smith, College Township. I just want to concur with the previous speakers that a letter is pretty much what needs to be done by College Township Council to represent the opposition. I'm just slightly disheartened by some prior speakers from the Township Council that, want to hear from the people that aren't speaking. Why can't we just listen to the people that are speaking? If people aren't speaking, they're not speaking. So the people that are speaking are tell you to stop this, tell you to slow it down, are asking you to do what we want you to do as our representatives in this process. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for your comments. And again, thank you for the digital feedback. All right, so anybody else from College Township online? Okay, so now I'll open up to Center County in the room. Well,
Whoever is.
can I ask the madam to go first? Madam, I don't know. Up to the lectern, only because you had stood up earlier to speak, so I'll give you the go-ahead.
Okay, I live in Fraser Township, so I don't live actually in College Township.
Okay, what is your name?
Elizabeth Pula.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth.
I think Paul Takic brought up the critical legal problem that has to get addressed first. But I'm surprised at what is this gentleman's name over here?
Adam.
Adam? Okay. That he had mentioned that as a second class township, that you are limited and cannot have a referendum.
Yes.
I did not understand that because I'm really a transplant from Ohio. And the framework legally is a little bit different. I've lived in a number of different states. But it's critical for the public to know, and I still don't know, even though I have scanned that full PDF and I have read a number of sections in depth last night for the PDF for the all of the information for the legal documents and all of the exhibits, okay? But nowhere can I at this present time comprehend what is the licensing allowing any step in from foreign corporate entities such as Bali's, okay, because it's an out-of-state entity, to take the land that this section of the mall is being affected by the licensing process. Now, Jennifer had mentioned that it just involves the interior of the old Macy's, which would have been a leasee of that whoever owns the actual shopping mall. Nowhere is it mentioned who owns the land, who owns the building, who in this process of licensing, and if anybody is going to carry on a casino in that property, what right do they have just because a bid for a license has been granted by the gaming board? Just because you have a license or a business license does not mean that you automatically are given the right to occupy the building. I understand that that property is questionable, that it may be involved with a sinkhole. There are problems with the heating system. There are problems with the ventilation system of that entire building. How much of the cost for any of the maintenance is going to be dumped on the township? Who is going to determine that? Is it going to be Lupert? Do they get to call the shots? Does Bali's get to call the shots as to who is going to be responsible for any legal issues in that occupied space? And nowhere, even in your FAQs, is that nobody's even asking those kind of questions, and they're critical questions. It seems to me that there is a granting going on of one person who is basically a front runner for a totally unknown backers who have put in maybe more than 10 million, and what right is there for the gaming board or for the township to just go along with a $10 million purchase for a license when there is nothing defined about what are the legal effects of that one person being granted a license to operate? Because it's not mentioned anywhere in anything I've read on the township website.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I will pause the time I've given for public comment so that that can be answered. I mean, we do know who owns that property.
Right, I mean, it's owned by a locally formed LLC. The Macy's property was subdivided off from what was then the Crown American Corporation, later became the actual owners of the mall, the current owners of the mall. It's Center Realty Associates, which is based out of Long Island. They have not ever owned the Macy's property. Macy's owned its own piece of property. And the sale that was conducted between Macy's and the locally formed LLC grants all those property rights of ownership to the locally formed LLC. The issues in terms of maintenance, operations, et cetera, have absolutely nothing to do with College Township. Those are either individual leases and agreements and arrangements that are business to business. None of those involve the township. The township has a limited scope in terms of the items and elements of development that we are allowed to control by state law, and the actual operational aspects of business and by or between business are completely out of our purview. There's no reason at this point in time to question the legitimacy of the property rights in play at Macy's in terms of their ability to grant a lease to a third party for some period of time. And while the township has no involvement in that and we have none of that documentation, we would not be expected to have that documentation. So if there's more that I need to try to answer, I'll attempt to, but I think that to the speaker's question, there's very little that the township is involved with relative to those types of operational aspects of a potential casino. Our involvement here is frankly quite limited in terms of simply allowing the township as a location where a Category 4 license could be located. That is essentially the extent of our involvement. The balance of that determination is entirely in the purview of the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board.
Thank you. Maybe the ownership of the land could be a piece of included on the frequently asked questions, now that it's been asked.
Yeah, I made a note of it.
Thanks. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, on a related note, and this was what I tried to address the last time, is what the limits of township council can control in terms of zoning and in terms of our allowances and restrictions under the municipal planning code. We can't just be arbitrary in our determinations of zoning or what we allow or what we don't allow. We have to work within certain parameters, and I feel like we do that because we owe it to the landowners as well, because that could potentially expose us to legal jeopardy if we don't apply the rules fairly and evenly across. So once we've made those determinations in terms of zoning, we have to abide by them, and we can't be arbitrary or capricious in terms of turning down land development plans just because we don't like them. We have to have some legal basis in order to do that. That's what I tried to convey last time, and I don't know whether that could be part of the FAQ, but I think it's a fundamental unfamiliarity, let's say, with how that works. So I don't know whether there's something that we can link to from our website or something that talks about the MPC and zoning and what our responsibilities and obligations are.
Yeah, I think that's well within the purview of the FAQs. We can work on an expansion, and again, we've committed to providing a draft back to council for final review before posting. So yeah, I will expand that, try to encapsulate that answer, again, just for clarity's sake, as to what are the rules and limitations.
And that may just address some of those questions. If somebody goes to look for those things, they may not find them in our FAQ, because we're assuming that there's some familiarity with some of this background. I'm not asking you to create something whole cloth. If there's something that we can refer to, that
yeah, I definitely think we can capture it at that point.
I see Dustin's hand up. Dustin, go ahead.
Yeah, just in the light of the FAQ being a living document, why don't we just post it now? And then we update it and revise it as needed, right? Let's not let perfection be our enemy here. I'm in favor of just getting it up there.
There was,
Sure.
yeah, I don't think any of your comments were critically
None of them
wrong.
were
They were just
showstoppers. They were all improvements.
Yeah,
to
help
what
improve it.
Yeah, I mean, and if I might, it's already in the public record. It's part of our agenda for this evening. So, you know, we could just post it as part of the agenda and just say to be continued and have a separate link to it.
Thanks, Dustin. I always appreciate that kind of comment. And I appreciate your comments too, Ms. Pula, for asking those questions, because those are the questions. If we don't know what the questions are, it's hard for us because we've been doing these jobs for years now, and to know like what you don't know, right? So I always appreciate those kinds of questions. We'll continue. We're gonna start the clock again. So, Mr. Schaefer, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Andrew Schaefer. I live in State College Borough, and I'd like to respond to the discussion that took place earlier again this evening. First, I'd like to reiterate what Kristen stated, that the letter to the Gaming Control Board really must arrive before their hearings about the casino on October 19th. We've observed many licensing approval processes through the Gaming Control Board, and our understanding is that their process is to conduct the hearings, then have closed-door meetings to deliberate about those hearings, at which point they make the decision to approve or deny, and then they formally ratify that with an official public vote at a subsequent meeting of the Gaming Control Board, at which there's very little discussion. There's no opportunity for public input. If we don't get that letter in before the hearings on October 19th, there's a very good chance that it will not be received in time to make a difference. So please do whatever you can to accelerate drafting and submitting that letter. Regarding the impact study, I appreciate the work that's being done there. I'm greatly encouraged by that. But also, please do not limit it only to the information that is readily accessible. That's like a person looking for their wallet under the street light rather than a block down the street where it fell out of their pocket, because that's where the information is accessible. Crime statistics at the casino sites are readily accessible, but crime caused by a casino is diffused throughout the entire surrounding community. One notable example that was cited in the statecollege.com article that was published yesterday was about a man who won big at Parks Casino. He drove home to New Jersey, and a robber followed him home from the casino and ended up murdering him in a botched robbery. Is that crime counted as a casino-related crime? To you and me, obviously that's a casino-related crime, but it didn't take place at the casino. It took place hours afterwards and many, many miles away. And the police database is not going to list that as a casino-related crime. There are many, many coding issues like that that will creep into play if you simply look at the coding statistics from the police database. Crimes are committed by gambling addicts who will steal for their employers. That's not going to be counted as a casino-related crime, even though it's driven by a casino-driven behavior. And so you need to dig deeper than that. And to get that information, given the available time frame, my best recommendation is to look at the academic research. Look at the research on larger casinos as well as the mini casinos, which have only existed for a few years. There's very little data about the mini casinos available, but the mechanisms by which they operate, the way that they make money, the way that they interact with their customers, is fundamentally the same as that of larger casinos. And so it's possible to interpolate or extrapolate, given circumstances, from a larger casino to a smaller casino. A smaller casino is going to have a smaller impact on its community, but then you can also extrapolate based on the community surrounding it. State College is particularly susceptible to the problems caused by a casino because it has so many students. It has 48,000 students in such close proximity. It's possible to look at the academic research and the statistics that are known about the impacts of larger casinos and get a reasonable projection about the impact of a mini casino in this environment. If you only look at the research about the mini casinos, because they've only existed for a few years, you're going to find that very little data is available. And you need to do a complete, comprehensive study if you really want to understand how this is going to impact our community. Regarding polling, as Kristen noted again, and I was involved in the polling effort also, and my parents were as well, we were seeing 9-1 against in the community. 90% of the community was opposed over a sample of thousands, not only in College Township, but in surrounding municipalities as well. StateCollege.com conducted a poll last week on their website, which was not a scientific poll. It did give people on both sides of the issue the opportunity to weigh in and express their opinions. That was 80% against the casino. These are consistent statistics. They're the only data points that are currently available. If you can do a survey in the available time, I encourage you to do it. Ask the residents what they want. You will find the same results. Ask the residents also, if you need to ask them conditional questions, would you favor writing the letter? Would you favor writing the letter?
Just pause one moment. Is the battery dead?
New batteries.
Thanks. Is CNET picking it up?
Oh,
Okay.
you got it, okay.
Go ahead and finish. We're just going to change the batteries in your mic.
Okay.
You don't have to speak into it.
Okay, I don't know if anybody can hear me out there, but,
They can. The owl's picking you up. It's
Okay.
just not being projected through the room.
okay, I'll try to speak a little more loudly.
Thank you.
Uh,
I didn't mean to throw you off. You were on a roll there. Go.
I believe we were talking about polling. The
Yes.
data points we have are consistent. If you do scientifically rigorous polling, I believe you will find the same results. It's not necessary to send a postcard out. You can do polling, politicians do it all the time. They commission polling firms to go out, call the people who live in the area. You can send out postcards and ask for responses. You can post feedback or a form on your website. People can contribute as much data as possible, apply it to statistical analysis, and get inclusive voice on our town. It's very, very close to the casino. And so taking that survey, I believe, is an excellent idea, and I encourage you to do it if the time permits, but if it doesn't, you have enough evidence to know the answer already. Okay, regarding the liability issue, the council made a great deal at its last meeting about how all the actions that you've taken to approve the steps that have gone on in this process are all required by law. You had no discretionary choice in allowing this casino into our community. You had to zone a use for that. Every land use has to be given a place in the township that it can be zoned. And so you did that. The land use approval, it fulfilled all the check boxes, so you had to approve it. You didn't have any discretionary say in this. And if you are only doing things that are legally required of you, you are not communicating approval or support. You are not giving the casino developers a basis to believe that you would support them. And so on that grounds alone, there is no basis for them to say that you are liable. Beyond that, should they choose to sue the township anyway, it's not purely your choice regarding that liability. You represent the people here. If the people in this township are willing to accept that risk, that choice should be given to them. They may prefer that you represent their wishes that this casino not be built here, even if that means that they lose a short-term financial impact because of that. Ask them that choice in your survey if you aren't able to get the answer to the legal liability question before you send out your survey. Also, ask the people in the adjoining municipalities. All of the other municipalities in the center region, all the ones surrounding the university, didn't even opt into allowing a casino to be built here. We know that their residents are strongly opposed. We know that their leaders are so strongly opposed that they took that initial proactive step to prevent getting into this problem in the first place. They may very well be willing to support this township in defending against any potential lawsuit if it means that they are not exposed to the harms that that casino would cause that will spill over beyond the boundaries of College Township and all the surrounding areas. And I think you'll find great support from the community as well. The individual citizens, we have fought this casino to get to this point now. We will continue to fight it. If you stand with us, we will stand behind you. And you have the resources of all of our community to fight against that as a unified community. Please take every step that you can to do it, and do it while there is still time to make a difference before that October 19th deadline. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Anybody else in the room? Go ahead. Please keep your comments.
I'll make it very quick.
Madam Chair,
Perfect.
before we move on to the next one, could I just ask Mr. Schaefer, a question?
Oh, excuse me. Thank you, Destin.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I was looking, and I found your say no as your suggestion from the last time we met, and I looked at your website and all that, and I was wondering if it was possible to get the actual petition with all of the data that's requested. I can't seem to find that. That would kind of help me with my decision making if that is something I could get, and I could get access to that data.
Yes, if you look at the Say No Casino website, if you go down slightly below the graph in the discussion at the top of it, there's a list of summary petition documents which were submitted to the Gaming Control Board. Those documents were also emailed to the College Township Council. You have them on file in your consent agendas for earlier meetings this year. The summary documents merely have the names and township affiliation of the people who filled out the hard copy and the online petition. If you have a need for the full contact information, I will be happy to share that with you on the proviso that the personal address and phone numbers and so forth of the people in there not be publicly disclosed in order to protect their privacy. But you can personally verify, you can follow up with these people if you wish. We took great pains to document the residency of the people who were answering this survey because we knew that this question would come up. That information is available. I would gladly share it with you if that's required.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to give this item about 5 more minutes, so I just want folks online to keep that in mind too. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Jesse McTurnan, and I live in the Borough State College. I'll make it quick. I agree with almost everything I've been hearing, so I had stuff to say, but I'll just say I agree. Regarding Paul, one comment you said, I don't agree that the community speaking up is arbitrary and capricious. You might not have meant it that way, but this is what the community wants. I'll say that when a casino prospers, the players lose. Who are the losers? Those are the ones, or the people who lose are the statistically illiterate, those who are addicted, and those who don't understand that get rich quick is essentially a myth. So just to make it short, I think that if the council does nothing to intervene with this casino in our community, more people will lose than win. Thank you.
Could you tell me your last name again?
I'm sorry, yeah, Jesse McTurnan, McTernan.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jesse. All right, next I have Randolph Hudson online. Please state your name and the municipality in which you live. I won't. Don't worry,
To whom
John.
are you speaking? To whom are you speaking?
Randolph Hudson. All right, I don't see Randolph coming up, so we'll move on to James Bennett.
Sure. Can you hear me on this mic?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, I had to turn my speaker down. I wasn't sure if you could hear me. So I did speak at the last meeting there, and one of the things I just wanted to bring up was that you heard a lot of testimony from people who have been affected by gambling and affected by people who are addicted to gambling. And you talked about you don't know whether or not the majority of the people agree with the group that's here, and that you don't know, you don't have enough people to really get the majority. But I think about elections, you don't have to have a majority of people. It's the people who are there representing the views, and they make the choice. And elections are, that's the way they work. So you have a small amount of people here, but yet how many people have given testimony that are really for this casino? I haven't seen a single person yet. And everybody here, I would venture to say, probably is against it. And the thought was, I spoke about the effect of gambling on me when I lived down in Maryland. And one of the reasons I moved up here was because I always looked at State College as a utopia. It's like not reality. It's so good that it's different than the rest of the world in a lot of ways. You know what I'm saying? And I keep thinking about how bringing gambling here is going to bring back what I moved away from in Maryland. And you're going to change the landscape forever if you do this. There's no going back once this happens. And I just think that it would be irresponsible for us not to consider sending that letter, because I really feel like you've got a good representation of people here that have experienced the bad side of gambling, the bad side of this coming into town. I just don't think the money it's bringing is worth the cost that it's going to, we're going to incur, which is going to affect everybody in the community. I just feel like it's too big a price to pay. So are you willing to change the landscape forever? Because that's what's going to happen if we bring this in. I've been here 14 years, and I've really enjoyed this community. I love this community. I really think it would be a mistake to not send that letter. I think it would be irresponsible based on the fact that you know what you've heard, you know what people have shared. And I think if you ask more people, you'd probably get the same story about the negative side of this. I just don't see that it's worth it. I just think there's other ways to bring in income into this area rather than stooping to this level, because I just don't like the idea after having seen it firsthand and seen what it does to people. So anyway, I'll stop there, but I just feel like I'm very feel strongly about this because of how it's affected me, and I just hope that you reconsider sending that letter regardless of whether or not you've heard from half the people.
Yeah.
So that's all I'll say.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. What municipality do you live in?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to say, I'm from Patton Township.
Patton Township.
My name is James Bennett.
All right, thank you. All right, first we're going to do Randolph, actually, next we'll go to Joan Bouchard and then Randolph Hudson, and then that'll be the end of comments on this topic. So go ahead, Joan.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We're going to go with Joan first. Sorry, Mr. Hudson.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I also
maybe-
have personally.
I'm sorry,
I
can you
also
just, I'm sorry, Mr. Hudson, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, can you just pause? Joan Bouchard is going to speak first, and then I'll call on you, Mr. Hudson, okay?
Sure.
Thank you so much. All right, Joan, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. What municipality do you live in?
That's good. Thank you very much. I'm coming back to give some reflections additional to what I said about my family and how it affected my family in the place where I lived before. First thing is, if we are going to have, and I think it's a good idea to take the other places where there are these 3 mini casinos and see if there's been any problem according to the police and whoever else you might talk to at the casino's management or, but I think we have to remember that there's something else in play here. Talking to the police, we're going to find out if there's been any prostitution or any abuse of alcohol, underage drinking, crime after the fact, or any other kind of problem that the police would be involved in. And these can all be measured and quantified. But what we can't measure is a long-term effect, and that is psychological damage that might be done to the students that are in the proximity. And in a sense, we're sort of talking about apples to oranges, because the other 3 places where there are mini casinos, they're not within 5 miles of a big university where there are 46,000 students. So that's my first point. The second thing I'd like to say is that I don't think that we have considered very much the fact that we have some kind of a responsibility, whether it is written down in any way or not, to Center County and to the other 5 townships that are part of the Council of Governments. We are looking at this just in terms of what is the right thing to do and what's the proper legal thing to do with regard to college townships. But it seems to me that there should be some thought about what kind of responsibility, whether it's written down or not, we have for the rest of our surroundings. And I do know that in Congress, for instance, in the U.S. Congress, there are many of the senators and representatives that will try to base their decision on whether they should vote for a bill or not on not just what would be good for their own constituents, but what would be good for the United States. And we haven't really given any consideration to that issue here at all. And I also would like to say that we could do things in a progression. If the solicitor comes in and says that we could send this letter saying we object to it without having any legal responsibility or liability in terms of a lawsuit, we could do that by the 6th of October, get it drafted, and then send that in. And from what I understand, the soonest that this casino could be approved would be the meeting that the PCBC is going to have on the 16th of November. So if we have some results that would be helpful, we could always send that to them after the fact, after their October meeting, but before their November meeting. But I really think that I agree with the other folks that have spoken earlier and said if we're going to do anything about this, we've got to get the letter drafted and ready to be approved at the meeting on the 6th of October, if that's when it is. And I think that that is probably the most important thing that I would have to say, but I want to just repeat what I said at the end of the meeting last time. And that is, I think, first of all, it behooves us to think about what is the right thing to do. And second of all, to think about how we can do it without doing harm to ourselves or anybody else. And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'm still Joan Bouchard. I still live at the Village at Penn State in Patton Township. And I'm just a plain old resident, but I've been a teacher all my life, and I have a son whose life has been blighted by gambling. And I'm delighted to see that there are so many people here that are representing my point of view. And one last thing is, when Andrew Schaefer put up his place in front of Macy's where people could put up a sign and say, I oppose, or I, support, between 80 and 90% of the people said that they were opposed. And so it's quite evident that among the people that care about this issue, it's a vast majority that don't want the casino here. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. All right, last but not least, thank you for your patience, Mr. Hudson. It is your turn.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Yes, thank you. Randy Hudson, Ferguson Township. I also have personal experience of the harm caused by gambling. My cousin's husband was addicted to gambling, and by his mid-30s, he had bankrupted himself and my cousin. They divorced, and he died early. I'm a lifelong resident of State College. I've lived in the borough, grew up in the borough, and now live in Ferguson. I've got a big network of friends, family, colleagues, Penn State alums, State College alums living all over the country, and their reactions when they hear about this casino are indignation and disgust. That's the reaction nationally. This is not just a College Township issue. This is absolutely a Center Region issue. The whole state looks up to the Center Region as exemplary governance. The fact that you guys and State College and Ferguson and Patton all have each other's backs is really pretty great. And so this is a regional issue. So I guess all of us are asking, please don't just conduct a study for the sake of checking a box before proceeding with approval. Please do the right thing, show leadership, and get us away from this casino. That's what everybody wants. And I thank you very much for all the work you're putting into this. You're really taking this very seriously, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson, and thank you everybody who spoke up and everybody who came, both through the internet, which is a weird thing to say, and
Can we have a couple more in the room?
in person. Do you not live in Center County?
I do live in Center County, Ferguson Township.
Okay.
And I think that gentleman wanted to speak.
Okay, I mean, I did limit the comments to what we did. If this is something that you would really like to share, I don't see why anybody would, hate another 3 minutes. Can you keep it to 3?
1 minute.
1 minute, perfect. State your name, and you've already stated where you live, and I appreciate you speaking up.
Susan Jackson, Ferguson Township. Many times this evening and in the previous meeting, I heard the sentence, unintended consequences. And as you meet with the solicitor this week and you find out what those definite consequences could be, every time that term comes to your mind or is spoken, I think you need to realize that it's not, oh, unintended consequences, that's bad, so let's go with the casino. You need to realize there are unintended consequences that would be defined, limited, payable, and versus
unintended consequences that will go years and years and years from now that we cannot project in any way, quantify or define. So unintended consequences are not just on one side of the equation, they're on both. And I know this is a naive, ridiculous notion, but if there were an opportunity for all the people opposed to throw money into a barrel to make this stop and to pay the unintended consequences legally, I think they would be happy to do that, to have that end and not go forward. So the idea of a monetary legal consequence should not stop you. You should realize how much the people are opposed. They'd rather pay something to have this end. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, again, thank you everybody for being a part of this agenda item. We do take your comments to heart, and I'm sure that I could, almost bet, but we are not betting people, that the other council members who are not here tonight will watch tonight's meeting and get caught up on your comments. I suppose it would be in order when we do set a date to meet with the solicitor, to post that on the website. Again, it's not a public meeting, but at least you know it's happening. So would that be appropriate?
Yeah, once we have
a date.
Dates established, right. we can do that.
Okay, great. This was not a voting item, so we will move on to the next agenda item. Appreciate you all.
Thank you all very much.
All right, so now we are moving to OB1, review of proposed landscaping plan for College Township building parking area.
Yeah, Amy, you are up.
I'm up, okay.
All right,
I see
Amy.
that the plan is up on the screen. So in the memo in the agenda summarizes the process that I've gone through to put up this project up for quotes. If you remember a couple years ago, I guess it was, I was here just to get input regarding the trees that have been taken down, and what I had heard was not monoculture. So keep that in mind as I move forward. And we know we had a couple of stumbling blocks with stock, etc. And we didn't get the trees planted or the landscaping plan planted last year. This year was the goal to do it. While I was doing this, I found that the landscaping plan for the project, or the building when it was originally constructed, as well as reviewing the ordinances, indicate that there needs to be headlight screen with the shrubbery, which they weren't here when I got here, so I didn't realize they were there. They had already been removed. I was only responsible for taking down the trees that were dying.
Oh, is that all you were
That's all I did, yes. But nonetheless, so in developing the plan so it's consistent with the original land development plan and also follows the ordinances, the plan that you see on the screen is what I have come up with in consulting with a landscape contracting firm. And also we're back to the number of trees that were originally planted with the original plan. Why I'm bringing this to you is because these trees that are right here still exist, as do these ones that are here on the edge still exist, and they are in conflict with what we want to accomplish with this plan to bring it back to its original state. The other thing is, the ordinance does indicate the distance that these plants should be from the curb line. So you can see where the old, well, maybe you can't see where the old trees are, but we're moving these trees back out away from the curb line so that we give more distance to the curb line, as well as try to stay away from the overhead wires that that go along the sign. So bottom line is, I did not want to put, this is a quote, so it wasn't a bid. But, and I secured my quotes, and obviously I'd like to get the contractor started, but all of a sudden if you were to come in and see that the remaining trees that are out there are now gone, I certainly didn't want that to be a surprise to you. So I wanted to bring this to you and explain why we were doing what we were doing, and just see if you had any comments before I, let the contractor go rampant. No, not rampant, just get started.
Just go.
Just go, all right. So you will see, if you look closely, there is still the non-monoculture, where we've picked 3 different trees, and I think there's three different shrubbery types, all of which are deer resistant.
Great, thank you. I will start with Dustin. Dustin, are you out there?
I am. I can no longer see myself on the screen, but trust me that I think you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can.
So I guess my question number 1 is, I see over to the far left and what we're looking at, remove existing pear trees and shrubs, and what's the reasoning behind removing those?
They are, actually, there's a couple of reasons. They are actually starting to get into the lines above them. They have been hacked several times to keep them out of the lines, as well as the traffic signal that's there. It interferes with the radar that is picks up the vehicles. And the trees are not in great health, according to the landscape contractor that I worked with, and I believe pear is on the invasive species list as well.
Yes, it is.
So many reasons why we thought it was time for them to come down.
Okay, and then my second comment is, so I looked up from the planning legend, right, and this was mostly all in scientific names. And I see that just 2 out of the 7 species are native to North America, let alone actually 1 just being native to Pennsylvania, and that being the eastern redbud. I would hope, as an example, right, one of the ones that is not native is Japanese boxwood, which is the Buxux microphylla. And we do have some really good native plants that are almost exactly, similar in size and shape, one being the inkberry. So, I mean, I would urge us to try to, work with the landscaper to, place more native, at least native to North America plants. It'd be nice, especially since this is street facing, to kind of be, the example to where we need to go, probably, in my opinion, where we need to go with, plantings and shrubbery. That's all I have.
Thank you, Dustin.
I do appreciate that. We do have to be cognizant that it is a salt area, because we do salt and cinder cinder the parking lot. So we did, when we worked with the person to try to pick something, we ought to be cognizant of the deer, as well as can it survive in the area that it's being planted, as well as stay in the height range that we need it to be. So.
Paul?
No, my only question is, this was in the budget to be done, and
It was this year, yes.
Okay.
The quote that we received is higher than what was budgeted, but it's subject to all the same forces that everyone has incurred here.
Sure. No, that makes good sense, and I agree, the lighting barrier, I've occasionally been hit with that light as I'm coming along College Avenue, so I'm in favor of this. I think it'll look aesthetically really nice too, compared to what is there now. So, the only other concern that I had was, there's still plenty of lines of visibility to the nice marker out in front, the College Township marker. As long as you can still see that, because I think that's really iconic, and I really like that. I want to make sure we have line of sight to that. But that's it. That's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know what I'm gonna say, which is more in line with what Dustin was saying. I mean, I have worked quite a bit over the last couple of years with some folks from the Million Trees Foundation through the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and that is an effort to plant 1 million shrubs and native shrubs and trees in the Chesapeake Bay area. And I will just say that they have stock coming out of their ears of native shrubs and trees. And I could hook you up with tiny versions of all of these things if we're willing to wait 3 to 5 years for them to mature. And I actually mean that seriously. And I know that this is the 11th hour on this. I get it. I would be remiss if I didn't say it. As a representative of the Climate Action and Sustainability Committee, I would just say planting a bunch of Asian species goes completely against what we're working toward. And I don't expect I don't expect you to be thinking, well, I mean, I don't know what you think about landscaping. It's not your wheelhouse, right? Like, you work in a different area. You're just trying to get this done, so this is not a personal slight whatsoever. Actually, it's not a slight against anybody. It's just, I guess, I understand that you want it done. I understand it would be a heavy, I mean, like, literally a heavy lift. Planting's a lot of work. I guess I'm just with Dustin on this one. This isn't even up for approval. You just wanted us to know that some pear trees would be cut down.
Well, I mean, we also wanted to get the feedback, and so, I mean, we're getting the feedback.
Yeah.
And if the feedback is, you want a different plan design, okay, I mean, we've already covered the trees, right? So we know, that was the one thing that I wanted to be sure the council was aware of, was the trees.
The
But,
pear trees are going, yeah.
you know, in terms of other comments that you may have, I mean, this is kind of why I just wanted to get it back in front of council before we went ahead and pulled a trigger. So, that said, if in fact there's a strong desire, and there seems that there is, to have a different planting plan, then we will defer, we'll work on that plan between now and the end of the year and target a spring planting for this area. So, I mean, it is simply, now it's simply a question of when and a question of what. And if there's a desire for more native species than what is represented here at the moment, then that's just additional working, identifying sources, et cetera, that we can do. But we'll simply we'll push it and we'll delay it and we'll move it into next year.
Thank you. I mean, I do appreciate that, and I do sincerely believe that there are native species that can handle salt. I mean, I don't know. I feel like this is one of those things that somebody like me looks at and is like, oh, I could help with this, but then when push comes to shove, you're the one who's like, hey, this just has to get done. Like, we just need somebody to do it.
Well, you know, the only consideration, and I know that Amy was sensitive to this too, was A, availability, and B, cost. And, you know, if money's no object, there's a lot you can do. And I'm not suggesting that native plants are more expensive. All I'm saying is that those were kind of the parameters that Amy was working with. But again, if there's a strong desire to do something, maybe make this more of a statement type project that fits in and meets with a variety of these other types of initiatives, then we can do that.
Yeah.
It just, at the end of the day, it may or may not be a little more costly, and it certainly will be done on a different schedule.
Right, and when it comes to the headlights, I mean, I would honestly prefer to see a net staked up until we get something more native, a native plan, than to see like the quick, you know, japonicas put in. I mean, Adam, there are a couple lilacs on there, just want you to know.
Yeah.
I'm not ready for Adam to retire.
Just wheeze up on you.
He's
But do you not like lilacs, Adam?
No. Lilacs are lovely. I can't handle the blooms in close proximity, that's all.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Now you know my personal history.
Now everybody knows about your allergy season.
Is there any chance to engage with Scott's Landscaping and see whether there are native species that they could sub out for some of this?
I will. I'll talk with them.
And just what the cost might be or what the timelines might be.
I would
I'm
also
just
be
curious.
open to a more, it's a very lovely layout, but I would be open to something a little bit more
Artistic?
wild. Just a little bit more natural, right? It doesn't have to be like like the trees especially, it's, I don't know, something a little bit more native looking. You know what I'm saying. Doesn't have to be.
Well, I mean, if we're delaying, I mean, we could really make this into a community project, probably even. You know, come plant a tree, buy a tree and plant a tree, right? or something like that. I mean, I understand the nursery stock is much larger, right? And that's why, the landscaping folks are bringing that in with the equipment and things like that. But I mean, there is, the possibilities are endless. And there is tons of, just like Carla, I just picked up all my trees last night. I got 200 native species, right? But they're seedlings, right? They're in a pot and a seedling. So it's going to take a while. But there are some pretty resistant native trees out there. Eastern red cedar. It's also a conifer too. I mean, we could put that in place of the pine, and that's very salt tolerant. It grows anywhere.
Great. So I hope that's enough feedback on the landscaping. I appreciate all the work that you
Perhaps
did.
more than enough.
Perhaps
Yes, no,
more than
thank
you were asking for. Appreciate all the work that went into it. Yeah. Okay. Moving on. If that is enough discussion.
That's enough.
Okay. Anybody online interested in talking about landscaping? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to old business 2. Proposed ordinance revisions, pedestrian facilities master plan. Ms. Skosh.
Thank you. So as a result of council sending a second remand to the Planning Commission regarding the pedestrian facilities master plan, the topic was brought forth to the Planning Commission on September 6th. There are about 7 items I want to go through here quickly, and they just follow along the remand and the memo that I've provided. So the first question, should sidewalks be required on low-volume roads in cul-de-sacs? The Planning Commission felt that yes, they should be treated just as other pedestrian facilities within the township, allowing for deferrals, fee in lieu, and waivers. Number 2 would require cul-de-sacs to have a right-of-way or linkage or a cut-through at the terminus. They really were pleased with that idea. The Springley Drive connection that an example was given in the remand was a great example, and they would like to see, their recommendation is to continue that. And the ordinance as it stands now, and thinking back to why we were sort of silent on the whole cul-de-sac issue, is because I believe we just allowed it to stay in the ordinance as is because it does give council the opportunity to add that right of way or easement into. So it's already included in the ordinance for council to be able to have that discretion. I did find a typo. I found it should be or, so if anyone picked that up, I got that as well. The third item, the Planning Commission felt there should be consideration along with other facilities when proposed, like linkages to other destinations, and they feel that should remain a priority, as it's stated in the PED plan. Moving on, a reference to workforce housing, that wasn't included, so thank you for bringing that to our attention. It is now. And once we got into that conversation, the Planning Commission felt that they were looking forward to opening up that ordinance again and doing some more work. They felt that having sidewalk waivers with workforce housing was sort of counterintuitive, and they felt that we can make that a little stronger when the time comes. And then finally, deferrals. Going through looking back into the memo, numbers 1 through 4, those would be the requirements to be able to receive consideration for a deferral, and numbers 5 through 7, those are the requirements after the deferral is approved. So that would just be something that we would add as a note on a plan and so forth. As for the ordering of the ordinance, exemptions and alterations, those just remain the same as they did in the existing SAUDO. Then we added the fee in lieu, a deferral, and the waiver as the last resort. That also goes in line with the process flow chart we have in place. And we did ensure that the note regarding A203 and the schedule of fees, we noted that was updated annually. The Planning Commission at first wanted to come back and review those numbers that we have regarding the costs of fee in lieu for sidewalks. They wanted to look at that quarterly, so we assured them that since A203 can be changed by a resolution, that can be changed at any time throughout the year if council sees fit to open it up again to change those fees. So we hope that with all of this information provided to you, that council is satisfied and enough to be able to move the plan forward to the public hearing process coming up. So that's just a brief report, so I'm looking for your comments.
Great, so just to be clear, if somebody were to make a motion tonight, it would be for a public hearing on November 17th?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Paul?
A comment, two comments. One, I really like the reordering of the deferrals and the items. I mean, I think that just reads a lot more clearly. It makes a lot more sense. Thank you for doing that. I can't imagine updating the fees quarterly. Annually seems like a lot to me. I would be very comfortable with periodically or as needed on there.
Daily,
because,
maybe?
yeah, well, there you go. Okay, we can go the other direction. Decennially, you know, kind of like with the census. I don't know. I mean, it just seems like we're locking ourselves into something there that just becomes another checkbox. I think if and when material costs go up or we see that there's some discrepancy, I think we could move relatively quickly. But if we just put periodically by resolution, that would be fine for me.
I can get behind that. Dustin, how do you feel about that adjustment? Okay, well, that's...
Yeah, there's no way that it's gonna be a quarterly review.
We struggle to get financing it
Exactly,
quarterly.
I mean, we can't even get our trees planted, so, I mean, we're not.
I was not gonna say that, however. But no, those were my only comments. And otherwise, I'm very happy with this. I appreciate all the work that went into it. I appreciate the prelude to it with the pedestrian facilities master plan. I mean, we're moving in the right direction, and I hope everybody in the township sees that we are really taking this seriously and we're moving forward. I think we're putting together some really good frameworks, so thank you.
Great. Dustin, comments?
No additional comments. I think it looks good. Thank you.
Great. Mike?
I'm just going to chime in as your conversation's wrapping up with just a reminder, Paul gave me a segue, that we do, as part of the pedestrian master plan, do still have that open for public comment through October 13th. This all kind of aligns, this process that we're looking at. Why we're looking out to November 17th is because of required public input period, but we also have, adjacent municipalities center region input period, but we also do still have that public input period going on through October 13th, and we will also be scheduling a open house, and that'll be announced here soon.
Great. We have some people online who may or may not be still listening. I just want to, is there a scan or a link or something on our website if they want to give their 2 cents about pedestrian facilities in the township?
Yeah, there's links on there that they can go on and go directly through a link, or we've pushed out updates periodically on our social media as well as our website that has codes as well. So there's a lot of ways to get to it. It takes you directly to a web hub that has a survey embedded, but it also is essentially an executive summary of the plan itself. And we do also have a hard copy station here in the council meeting room as well.
Great, thank you for reiterating that. Okay, without further ado, I will accept what you're about to say.
Chair, I move that we set a public meeting for comment and review of draft ordinance number O-22-04 on November 17th.
Are there any other pieces to that?
Well, that evening...
Or should those be separate?
So that evening, we'll have a public hearing for both the ordinances and to adopt the pedestrian facilities master plan.
Do I need to include that in my motion?
No.
No, you did not.
I second.
All right, any comment?
No, you don't.
Any comment online?
I would be willing to amend it.
All right, seeing none, all those in favor of Paul's motion say aye. Aye. All right, motion passes.
Thank you, everyone, so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much.
All right, that brings us to new business. It's like we're just flying. Okay, new business 1, Thompson Woods Preserve intermunicipal agreement.
I am very pleased at long last to be able to deliver to council for final action an intermunicipal cooperation agreement between College Township and the State College Borough for governance of Thompson Woods Preserve. Back in May, College Township Council had reviewed a draft primarily developed by Mr. Bloom here of an intermunicipal agreement that essentially would establish a governance committee as well as an advisory committee for the purpose of providing direction and input to the overall activities and organization of Thompson Woods Preserve. Because the preserve falls both within College and State College Borough, in order to accomplish the purposes of that governance structure, we needed to have an intermunicipal agreement. In May, you forwarded that. State College Borough reviewed that. Their council recently, actually I believe it was in August, adopted it with no changes. And they have executed their portion of the agreement, and we are now ready to take final action, subject to any final comments that council may have. I am anticipating and hoping that there aren't any, because we would need to go back to the borough again with any changes. So my recommendation to council this evening is to adopt a resolution, I've got it here somewhere, R2219, which gives us the authorization then to enter into the intermunicipal agreement. And the motion would be to then execute the intermunicipal agreement. So that's all that I have. If there's more that is required or questions that need to be answered, I will try.
All right, since we have rehashed this several times, I would like to, instead of going into discussion, start with a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move we adopt Resolution R22-19 and authorize the council chair and township manager to execute the intermunicipal cooperation agreement with the Borough of State College pertaining to the governance of Thompson Woods Preserve.
I second that. Paul is too fast. I wanted to get that motion in.
All right, is there any discussion?
No, just thank you to everyone for putting all of the effort into this. It is going to make a huge difference to the residents nearby and to the folks who use and love that preserve.
Dustin, anything?
I didn't see anything about native tree species. No, I digress. No, yes, well done, thank you. I like it the first time we looked at it. I'm glad that State College Borough has seen that we did a great job on this. You guys did awesome. Thank you.
All right, any comment from the public still left with us this evening online?
Seeing none.
Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Right, that's just us.
Could it be hell yeah?
Okay, moving on. NB2, renewal of PennDOT traffic signal maintenance agreement. Back to you, Ms. Kerner.
Sure, no problem. The township has an opportunity to apply for a traffic signal technologies grant, and if awarded, the grant would fund the upgrade of fiber network and some traffic signal cabinet and other miscellaneous appurtenances at 4 of the intersections, which are bounded by the Y at the mall and Shiloh Road. So those 4 that are in that little corridor. The Walmart Drive at Nittany Mall access, the Nittany Mall Stalkers Suburban Drive access. Prerequisite of applying for the grant is that the township must have a valid traffic signal maintenance agreement with PennDOT, and that requires a resolution authorizing the township the manager to execute the documents. Attached are Resolution R22-18 and the traffic signal maintenance agreement. They were in the agenda, and I'm asking that council make a motion or approve the resolution to authorize the manager to execute the signal maintenance agreement with PennDOT so that we can submit the traffic signal grant application.
So you're saying that we need a TSMA, which is available on the darn it, I was gonna go for it, TSAMS, but don't forget to check the TSMM.
Something like that. Okay. If I may, I don't want anybody to think, or council's not had to deal with these for quite some time. We have always had traffic signal maintenance agreements. The issue at hand is there's been a change as to form that PennDOT is using. This is really nothing new. It is simply that our agreements are so dated that they have not implemented or utilized the new format.
Right,
So
your TSMs now need to be on the TSAMs.
Yeah, precisely.
Okay.
So there you go. And that's the reason why we're here before you tonight.
All right, we're gonna hold comment until there's a motion. So I will pause before accepting a motion. Does anybody have a motion?
Well, wait, just so clarification, nothing's really changing, it's just a formality, right?
That is correct.
Okay, the maintenance is still happening the way it always had, it's just a formality, got it, okay.
Yep, that's exactly correct.
All right, so
Okay.
do we have a motion?
I move to approve resolution R-22-18 to authorize the township manager to execute the traffic signal maintenance agreement with PennDOT.
And I will second that motion.
All right, any further questions or comments? Yes, Paul?
Just a quick question. What triggered the opportunity for this grant? It seems to be along that corridor. Was there something in particular, or are they just the ones that are most in need of upgrading? I mean, why these four, I guess? I'm just curious.
Well, no, we actually had put this little group together as an ARLI grant that didn't get funded, 2 years ago, I guess it was. So lo and behold, when this new traffic signal technology grant, actually PennDOT reached out to us, the signal division reached out and said, hey, there's this new grant opportunity. And it has more to do with the fiber network and then connecting it back to
Central.
district office. District office, their command center. It just made sense because we were gonna be going for some coordination updates and stuff with that little 4 signal corridor.
It's apparently a new pot of money.
Yes.
That's not been available before, and I'm not sure where the funds came from, but it is a new pot of money. This also correlates with the work that is being done on Atherton Street. For similar type connectivity, fiber upgrade back to the district office. So this automated traffic, the ATSM, of course. That's kind of a big push that PennDOT has right now. And again, as Amy just said, the fact that we had grouped these together for an ARLI grant in a prior year and were unsuccessful, kind of, they remembered us and made sure that they reached out.
That's great that they did that. Like I said, I'm familiar with the ARLI grants. I just wasn't sure, and related to the small area plan and all the different things that we have going on out there. I was just curious. So that's great that they reached out to us, and I'm very much in favor of this.
Great, anything further? Anything from the public about traffic signals? Okay, great. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, and the motion passes. We are finished with our old business and our new business. Now there is some time for staff informatives. Anything about staff informatives?
As far as submitted, no. If you're interested, there is the Firemen's Relief Association, the compliance audit.
Yeah, I saw that.
And we do receive these periodically, and always try to make those available to council. I have nothing specific to offer on that.
The summary of that was that we are now in compliance.
Yeah, well, and again,
I mean, we always were in compliance.
It's not unusual in the compliance audits for there to be a few relatively minor issues that need to be clarified. And clearly in this case, the Relief Association has done so.
Great. Council staff, other matters?
Just
Yes.
one from me. I am going to be out of the office beginning tomorrow and through next Wednesday. I'll be back in the office next Thursday. I'm going to be attending the International City Management Association Conference in Ohio. And in my stead, Mr. Bloom, as assistant manager, will be taking the helm.
Great, thank you for the reminder.
Will that impact our meeting with the solicitor?
But, I mean, he's back Thursday.
I'm back Thursday in the office, and Louis had indicated Tuesday, Wednesday as a
Okay.
timeframe for the letter back, so we could still easily schedule an executive session.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a priority. We would like to do that as soon as.
I assumed as much, so we will target Thursday, make people aware.
Any chance of an award at this time?
I'm hoping.
Yeah, just checking. I mean, we
Once
seem
you get
to
used
go
to it,
these-
it's hard to
Yeah,
get
you know,
unused to
it's-
it.
Not even gonna say it. Okay.
Unless Jen has set up something in the background, probably so.
All right, anything else for the good of the order? All right, without further ado, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. Meeting adjourned.